There's a ghost in the machine of our modern world, and for a long time, I thought it was me. I was the silent account, the profile picture that never changed, the friend who was tagged in photos but never posted his own. In a world that screams to be seen, I chose to be a whisper, and for that, I was seen as an anomaly, a relic, or simply someone who wasn't living at all. But they were wrong. My story isn't about logging off, it's about logging into a different reality, one that doesn't require a password. It began, as many things do, with a chase. I was once a prolific curator of my own life. My digital self was a mosaic of perfect sunsets, artfully arranged brunches, and triumphant mountaintop poses. I was a cartographer of happiness, mapping out a life that was perpetually golden-hued and enviable. Each post was a carefully crafted broadcast, a signal sent into the ether in the hope of receiving a signal back, a like, a comment, a share. This was the currency of my worth, and I was constantly working to earn more. The pressure was immense, an invisible weight that dictated where I went, what I ate, and even how I felt about an experience. It was a performance, and I was growing tired of the stage. The breaking point came under the ethereal glow of the aurora borealis in Iceland. It was a moment I had dreamed of, a pilgrimage to the edge of the world to witness nature's most spectacular light show. As the sky began to dance with impossible shades of green and violet, my first instinct wasn't awe, it was panic. My phone was too cold. The exposure was wrong. I couldn't capture the sheer scale of it. I fumbled with settings, my fingers numb, my breath misting in the frigid air. I was so consumed with proving I was there, I completely forgot to be there. Around me, others were doing the same, their faces illuminated not by the celestial ballet above, but by the cold blue light of their screens. We were all there, but none of us were present. When I finally looked up from my device, the most intense part of the display was over. I had a few blurry, inadequate photos and a profound, hollow ache in my chest. I had traded a sacred experience for a failed attempt at content. That night, in a small guest house, I deleted the apps, not with a grand announcement, but with a quiet, trembling thumb. I chose to become a ghost. The first few weeks were a lesson in withdrawal. My hand would twitch for my phone in my pocket, an amputee still feeling a phantom limb. The conditioned reflex to document, to share, to seek that tiny, addictive hit of dopamine from a notification was a powerful current to swim against. My friends, especially my closest friend Chloe, were concerned. "Leo, are you okay? You've gone dark," her texts would read. Her feed remained a vibrant, relentless stream of life, concerts, new recipes, weekend trips. To her, my silence was a sign of depression, of retreat. She couldn't understand that it wasn't a retreat from life, but a retreat from the performance of life. In this newfound silence, I discovered that not posting was a profound form of control. In a world that demands constant disclosure, my silence was my sanctuary. I was no longer offering up my private moments for public consumption and judgment. I was reclaiming them. This wasn't shyness, it was a deliberate psychological choice. I was taking back what I called my psychological ownership over my own experiences. A beautiful walk in the woods didn't need to be validated by 100 likes to have been beautiful. It was beautiful because the light filtered through the leaves in a certain way, because the air smelled of damp earth and pine, because it was mine. To fill the void left by endless scrolling, I started spending time at an old woodworker's shop run by a man named Arthur. He was in his 70s, with hands as gnarled and wise as the oak he often worked with. His shop was a haven of tangible reality. The smell of sawdust, the hum of the lathe, the patient scrape of a handplane. It was all real, all present. One afternoon, as I watched him meticulously carve a detail into a chair leg, I asked him if he ever took photos of his work to show people. He paused, wiping his brow with the back of his hand, and looked at me with kind, clear eyes. "Sometimes," he said, his voice a low rumble. "But the photograph is a pale ghost of the real thing. It can't show you the balance of the piece, the feel of the grain under your fingertips, the way it settles into a room. The photograph is for others. The work," he patted the chair leg, "is for the wood and for me. It's a conversation between us. Why would I want to shout about a quiet conversation? His words resonated deep within me. I realized that my life online had been one long, desperate shout. Arthur's creations didn't need an audience to have value. Their value was inherent in their craftsmanship, their purpose. This was the beginning of detaching my self-worth from digital applause. I began to understand that people who post infrequently, or not at all, often possess a higher degree of self-restraint and emotional independence. They are less swayed by the treacherous currents of social comparison because they're not constantly looking at other people's maps. They are drawing their own. My silence wasn't always serene. There were moments of doubt, of feeling invisible. The world moved on, celebrating birthdays, promotions, and engagements in a public forum from which I was absent. Sometimes my silence masked a fear of judgment, a worry that my quiet, simple life wasn't enough to be shared. But with time, that fear was replaced by a quiet confidence. My invisibility became a form of self-definition. By refusing to be defined by a curated grid of images, I was asserting that my existence was more complex, more nuanced, and frankly, none of anyone else's business unless I chose to share it with them personally. My relationship with Chloe began to change. Instead of exchanging quick comments on each other's posts, we started having long phone calls. We met for coffee, and without the pressure of needing to take a perfect photo of our lattes, we just talked. One evening, she confessed the exhaustion she felt, the constant pressure to outdo her last vacation, her last party, her last post. It feels like I'm running a marketing campaign for a product called My Perfect Life, she admitted, her voice weary. Sometimes I don't even know if I'm having fun or just creating the evidence that I did. In that moment, I saw her not as the vibrant, always happy persona online, but as a person, tired and vulnerable. My absence from the platform had allowed for a more genuine connection to emerge. We were rebuilding our friendship, free from the need for digital proof. It was no longer about showing the world we were friends, it was simply about being friends. Research I stumbled upon later confirmed my experience. Individuals who take a break from social media often report a significant increase in emotional stability and life satisfaction. I was living proof. The world around me started to come alive, with a vibrancy I'd missed while viewing it through a 5-inch screen. I noticed the intricate patterns of frost on a window pane, the sound of a distant train whistle on a quiet night, the way a stranger's face would light up when they smiled. I was absorbing the details others were too busy broadcasting to notice. Those who live quietly often experience life most intensely. Privacy, I learned, is not loneliness. It is a profound intimacy with oneself. In the quiet, I could finally hear my own thoughts, untangled from the opinions and reactions of hundreds of other people. I could listen to my own desires, my own values, my own definition of a life well lived. My silence was not emptiness. It was depth. It was a space I had cultivated for my own growth, a garden where the seeds of my true self could flourish without the harsh glare of a public spotlight. Last autumn, I took a trip to the coast by myself. One evening, the sunset was breathtaking, a riot of orange, pink, and gold melting into the deep blue of the ocean. The old me would have scrambled for my phone, taking a dozen photos, agonizing over the best one, crafting the perfect caption. The muscle memory was still there, my hand twitched, but then I stopped. I took a deep breath, inhaling the salty air. I watched as the sun dipped below the horizon, feeling the cool evening air on my skin. I didn't take a single picture. There is no digital record of that moment. It exists only in my memory, pure and undiluted. It wasn't a piece of content to be consumed, it was a moment to be lived. And it was one of the most beautiful sunsets of my life, precisely because it was only for me. My silence is not an absence. It is a presence. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you don't have to broadcast your joy to feel it, or explain your life to have lived it. There is a richness in an unposted life, a sacredness in the moments we keep for ourselves. Not everything that is meaningful needs to be shared, because some things, the truly important things, are not meant for the world. They are meant only for the soul. And the ghost in the machine? It was never me. The ghost is the life we forget to live when we're too busy performing it for an audience. My greatest act of rebellion was to simply close the curtain and enjoy the show for myself.